In the far edge of the galaxy, where stars burn cold and old, there was a small blue world named Virelia. It was home to a gentle race called the Virel, a people of peace, art and song. Their cities were made of light and glass, their oceans clear as crystal. They loved beauty more than power, harmony more than war. But in the dark corners of space, beauty was weakness. And the galaxy had no mercy for the weak. The Virel were known across many systems as the fragile ones. They had no armies, no soldiers, no weapons. They believed war was the failure of intelligent minds. The stronger races laughed at them. Some used them as servants. Others came only to take their resources and leave. Still, the Virel hoped for peace. They always believed kindness could change hearts. Then, one silent night, that hope was tested. Low hum of engines, then explosions in the distance. From the blackness of space came the Khan Raiders, a brutal pirate race that hunted the helpless. Their ships fell on Virelia's moons like fire from the sky. Villages burned, cities screamed. The Virel had no defense. They ran, they hid, they begged. No one answered their calls for help. For 3 days and nights the sky burned red. The Virel watched their world fall apart, their art turned to ash, their families taken away. It was the end of everything they knew. Then, something unexpected happened. In the middle of the chaos, a strange signal appeared, not from the pirates, not from the Virel, but from somewhere deep in the northern desert. A ship had crashed, a ship unlike any they had seen before. Soft static, radio crackling, footsteps in the sand. The survivors of that crash were not from any known empire. They were human. The first Virel who saw them could hardly believe their eyes. These beings were different. Tall, strong, their faces scarred by battles the Virel could not imagine. Yet their eyes were calm, almost kind. One of them, a woman named Captain Reed, stood before the trembling Virel scout and said softly, "We're not here to harm you. We need your help. And maybe we can help you too." The Virel had never seen such people. They wore strange armor made from metal and fabric. Their ship was old and damaged, but filled with strange machines, tools for war, for building, for survival. The Virel offered them food and shelter. In return, the humans repaired water systems, helped rebuild shelters, and defended small villages from pirate scouts. At first, the Virel were afraid of them. The humans seemed violent, rough, always training, always alert. But soon they began to see something else: discipline. The humans were not violent for pleasure. They were survivors. They carried pain in silence, but also strength in unity. A young Virel named Lyra watched them every day. She saw how they worked together, how they never gave up, no matter how hard the task. One evening she asked Captain Reed, "Why do you fight so much? Does it not hurt you?" Reed smiled, a tired but proud smile. "It hurts. Every time. But pain teaches us to rise again. We fight because someone has to protect what matters." Lyra didn't understand fully, but something inside her began to change. Days passed. The humans stayed. They began to study the Virel's world and saw the horror left by the pirates. They knew the raiders would return, but stronger this time. So they made a decision. They would not leave. They would stand with the Virel. Music grows darker, tension builds. The humans gathered the Virel leaders and said, "We can't fight your war for you, but we can teach you how to fight it yourselves." The Council of Virel was shocked. They had never held a weapon. They believed fighting turned hearts to stone. But when they looked around, at their broken cities, at their missing children, silence filled the room. Even peace had failed to protect them. Lyra stepped forward. "If we do nothing," she said softly, "we will lose everything. Teach us." That night, under the twin moons of Virelia, a promise was made. Humans and Virel would train together. Not to destroy, but to defend. Not to conquer, but to survive. Sound of distant drums, the rhythm of training. Soft voices calling orders. The first lessons were hard. The Virel were not used to physical pain or harsh discipline. Many wanted to quit, but every time someone fell, a human hand reached out to lift them up. And every time a Virel cried, a human whispered, "You can do this. Stand up." Slowly, something new was born, not in their bodies, but in their hearts. A spark, a fire that had been sleeping for centuries. By the time the next sunrise came, the humans stood on a hill watching rows of Virel trying to march, clumsy but determined. Captain Reed turned to her crew and said quietly, They called them weak. But maybe they just never had someone to show them how strong they could be. Music fades to silence. A single shot of Lyra breathing hard, holding a training staff, and far above, hidden in the dark of space, the Khan raiders watched their scanners. They had found their next target, Virelia. Morning light touched the glass towers of Virelia. The once silent courtyards were now filled with movement, rows of Virel trying to train under the hard eyes of their human teachers. For the first time in their long history, the fragile ones were learning the language of survival. The humans called it the lesson of fire, because fire could destroy, but it could also forge. Captain Reed stood with her arms crossed, watching her small team of soldiers work. They were patient but firm. The Virel were fast learners in mind, but their bodies were weak and soft. Even lifting weapons was difficult for them. "Again!" shouted Sergeant Cole, as a group of Virel tried to march in a straight line. They stumbled, confused by the rhythm. Some fell, some laughed nervously, but Lyra didn't. She refused to stop. Sweat ran down her pale skin. Her hands shook as she tried to balance the wooden staff. Every time she dropped it, she picked it up again. Cole noticed her and nodded quietly. "That one," he said to Reed. "She's got the spark." Reed looked at Lyra and smiled slightly. "Let's see if the spark can survive the fire." Days turned into weeks. The Virel learned how to stand, how to defend, how to move with purpose. The humans didn't just teach them how to fight. They taught them how to think like warriors. They taught strategy, teamwork, and courage. Simple words, simple lessons, but powerful. "Her strong body means nothing," Captain Reed told them one night, as the Virel sat around a campfire listening. "You win battles here," she pointed to her head. "And here," she touched her heart. The Virel were silent. Their people had never spoken of war this way. For them, conflict was always evil. But Reed's words carried something different. Not hate, not hunger for power, but hope. As training continued, Lyra started to change. She was still small and thin, but her eyes were sharp now. Her movements were faster. She no longer looked down when she spoke to humans. When the others grew tired, she encouraged them. "Captain Reed says courage is stronger than fear," she told them. "If they can stand against the darkness, so can we." The other Virel began to follow her. She didn't know it yet, but she was becoming their voice, the first true leader her kind had seen in generations. One evening, as the twin moons rose, Captain Reed called Lyra to the edge of the camp. They looked out over the glowing city lights below. "Do you know why we teach you all this?" Reed asked. Lyra shook her head. "So we can fight." Reed smiled. "No, so you never have to run again." Those words hit Lyra deep inside. For the first time, she understood what it meant to fight, not to destroy, but to protect. But peace never lasts long in a cruel galaxy. Dark, heavy music rises. A deep alarm echoes through the camp. Late one night, a signal came through the human scanners. Reed's face turned cold as she read the data. "They're coming back," she whispered. The Khan raiders. The room fell silent. The pirates, the monsters who had burned their world, Werabindi, were returning. This time with more ships. The humans had known this moment would come. They had warned the Virel again and again that one day the test would arrive. Now it was here. Reed gathered everyone. Her voice was steady, but her eyes showed the weight of fear. "You wanted to learn how to be strong. This is your chance. We can't fight for you, not all of it, but we'll fight with you. You've trained for this. You can win." Lyra stepped forward. Her heart was racing, her hands shaking. But she looked at her people, the artists, the healers, the dreamers who had suffered for so long, and she saw something new in their faces. Not fear, not weakness, fire. "We are not the fragile ones anymore," she said softly. "We are Virel, and this is our home." Her words spread through the crowd like light breaking through storm clouds. Even the humans were silent for a moment. Sergeant Cole smiled and whispered to Reed, "Looks like the spark found its fire." The next day was spent preparing. The Virel moved with purpose now, setting traps, building defenses, using what the humans had taught them. Old mining drones were turned into turrets. Communication towers became signal jammers. Every corner of their city was ready for war. The humans provided weapons, but the Virel chose to use simpler tools, staffs, slings, shock nets. They said they didn't want to kill. They just wanted to protect. "Oh, you fight your way," Reed told them. "That's what makes you strong." As the night came, the first pirate ships appeared in orbit. The stars filled with red light. The sky trembled with sound. But this time the Virel did not run. They stood side by side with their human allies. They waited, quiet, calm, hearts pounding like thunder. "Remember," Reed said over the comms, "strength isn't in your arms. It's in your will." The pirates laughed as they descended, thinking they would meet weak, helpless creatures again. They didn't know what waited below. Engines roar. Lights flash. The first battle begins. Lyra took a deep breath, her weapon shaking slightly in her hands. "For Virelia," she whispered. "For all of us." The sky turned to fire. Explosion echoes, screen fades to black. The night sky above Virelia burned with fire. Dark ships of the Khan raiders dropped through the clouds like falling shadows. Their cannons glowed red, their engines screamed like beasts. Below, the Virel waited, silent, shaking, but standing. They were not the same fragile beings who once ran in fear. They had trained. They had learned, and tonight they would fight. Captain Reed stood beside Lyra, watching the skies. "They're coming in fast," Reed said, checking her scanner. "Remember your positions. Don't break formation." Lyra nodded, gripping her staff tightly. Her heart pounded like a drum inside her chest. This was the moment everything had led to. The lesson of fire was over. Now came the test. The first explosion hit the outer walls. Dust filled the air. Screams echoed from the eastern gate. The pirates landed in heavy armor, roaring with laughter. They expected another easy victory. "Weaklings!" one of them shouted. "We've come to take what's left of your pretty little world." But as he stepped forward in a flash of light, a trap exploded under his feet. He fell stunned as the Virel fighters appeared from behind the ruins, moving fast and silent. They struck with shock nets, staffs, and electric traps built from old machines. The raiders stumbled, confused. This wasn't the same Virelia they had burned months ago. "They're fighting back," a pirate shouted. "Impossible! They're just—" A sharp crack of energy cut him off. Lyra moved through the smoke, her staff glowing faintly blue from the electric charge. Her body trembled, but she didn't stop. She remembered Captain Reed's words. Courage is stronger than fear. Now she understood. Every time she was afraid, she just moved forward anyway. From a nearby rooftop, Captain Reed and Sergeant Cole watched the battle unfold through tactical lenses. "They're doing it," Cole said, disbelief in his voice. "They're holding the line." Reed smiled, proud and silent. They just needed a reason to believe. The humans fired from the flanks, supporting but never leading. They wanted the Virel to earn this victory themselves. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about becoming something new. The air was full of smoke and light. Every corner of the city turned into chaos. Yet within that chaos, the Virel moved with order. They worked in teams. They used their knowledge of the city to their advantage. When pirates tried to enter the glass corridors, floors collapsed under them, traps the Virel had built using old construction drones. When they tried to fire from ships, the signal jammers shut their weapons down. The humans had given them tools. The Virel had turned them into hope, but war always has a price. On the western ridge, a pirate gunship broke through the defenses. Its plasma cannons tore through buildings. Lyra's unit was caught in the blast. She fell, rolling across the dirt, ears ringing, smoke filling her lungs. Around her, a few Virel lay still. Others crawled to cover. Fear started to rise again, like an old ghost. Then she heard a familiar voice through her earpiece. "Lyra," Reed said, her voice steady. "You're still alive. You can finish this." Lyra looked up at the burning sky. The gunship hovered above, lights flashing. Her hands trembled. Her eyes burned with tears. But she stood. "For Virelia," she whispered. She picked up a broken energy lance, one of the weapons she had sworn never to use. She ran toward the wreckage of a fallen tower, climbing up the side, the air hot around her. Her body screamed with pain, but she didn't stop. At the top, she saw the ship's weak point, the cooling vent near its rear engine. Taking a deep breath, she aimed the lance and fired. A flash of blue light cut through the smoke. The ship exploded in a wave of fire, shaking the city. The pirates screamed, fleeing back to their transports. The Virel cheered, their voices echoing across the broken streets. By sunrise, the raiders were gone. The once fragile city stood scarred but alive. The Virel had won their first battle. Captain Reed walked through the ruins, her boots crunching against glass and dust. She found Lyra sitting beside a fallen wall, her hands still trembling, face covered in soot. "You did it," Reed said softly. "No," Lyra replied. "We did it," Reed smiled. "That's the right answer." Later that day, the surviving Virel gathered in the city square. They placed broken weapons on the ground, not as trophies, but as a promise. Lyra stood before them, her voice calm but strong. "We fought to protect, not to destroy, and we won because we stood together. This is our fire, not one that burns others, but one that keeps us alive." The humans watched quietly from the back. They had seen many wars, many victories, but this one was different. Sergeant Cole looked at the smoke rising into the dawn. "You think the rest of the galaxy saw that?" Reed nodded slowly. "Oh, they saw it, and they'll be afraid." Far above, in the cold dark of space, a shadow moved, a massive ship belonging to a powerful alien empire. Its scanners replayed the battle footage. Their voice spoke in the silence. "So, the humans are teaching the weak to fight. That will not be allowed." The screen went dark. Soft music fades in, mixed with static and heartbeat sounds. Weeks passed after the Battle of Virelia. The smoke had cleared, and the world was healing. The once quiet cities now carried a new sound, not of fear, but of purpose. The Virel rebuilt together with their human allies. They repaired towers, cleared debris, and honored the fallen. For the first time in their long history, the Virel didn't see themselves as victims. They saw hope. Lyra walked through the streets each morning, helping others, guiding teams, and training young ones. Children followed her, copying her stance, laughing when she pretended to swing a staff. She was no longer the shy student who trembled at every command. She had become something greater, a symbol of courage. Captain Reed watched from a distance, proud but cautious. "They're changing faster than I expected," she said to Sergeant Cole. "Yeah," Cole replied. "And the galaxy won't like it." Far across the stars, the news had already spread. In every trade hub and council hall, one name whispered through the air: Virelia. Reports spoke of a fragile race who had defeated the Khan raiders with the help of humans. Many didn't believe it. Others did, and they were afraid. In the high chamber of the Zarth Dominion, one of the most powerful empires in the galaxy, leaders gathered to discuss the growing rumor. Their glowing eyes reflected the hologram of the battle. "Humans," hissed one of the counselors, "always interfering, always turning weakness into rebellion." "They are dangerous," another said. "They teach the broken to stand. That cannot be allowed." "The Virel were nothing," the High Chancellor spoke coldly. "Now they are soldiers. What happens when humans do this to others?" Silence filled the room. Then the Chancellor gave one final order: "Prepare the fleet. The fire must be put out before it spreads." Back on Virelia, life had returned almost to normal. But Captain Reed and her team knew better. Their sensors had picked up strange movements near the edge of the system. Unknown ships. They had seen this pattern before, when empires prepared to strike. Reed gathered her officers and Lyra in the command room. The holographic map flickered, showing red dots approaching. "We have company," Reed said quietly. "Who?" asked Lyra. "Not pirates. Something bigger, military." Lyra looked at the glowing screen. Her chest tightened. "They fear us now." "They fear what you've become," Reed corrected. "And they'll do anything to stop it." For the first time since the war, silence filled the room. The humans exchanged glances. They had seen this story before, in other worlds, other times. Every time humans helped the weak rise, the powerful grew afraid. "Fear of the strong," Cole said bitterly. "That's what this is." The following days were tense. Viral scouts reported unknown drones scanning the planet's surface. Communications were jammed. And in the night sky, faint lights could be seen moving. Too high, too organized to be pirates. Still, the humans refused to leave. Reed met with the Viral Council. "They're coming for both of us," she said firmly. "If we run, they'll burn your world again. But if we stand, maybe others will follow your example." The council members exchanged nervous looks. "If we fight again," one of them whispered, "we might lose everything." "If you do not fight," Reed answered, "you already have." Lyra stood up. "We didn't ask for this war, but we will not go back to fear. Not again." That night, under the twin moons, Reed and Lyra walked through the training grounds. The city lights shimmered across the sand. "Do you regret teaching us?" Lyra asked softly. "Never," Reed said, "but I regret the galaxy's fear. They hate what they don't understand." "Then we'll show them," Lyra replied. "We'll show them strength doesn't mean cruelty." Reed looked at her, proud but worried. She knew what was coming. The next war wouldn't be about pirates or bandits. It would be about control, about stopping the rise of those who dared to change the balance. A week later, the sky above Viralia turned red again, not from fire, but from engines. A fleet of massive ships appeared, dark as night, blocking the stars. The Zarth Dominion had arrived. The sound of alarms, rushing footsteps, shouts of panic. The humans activated the defense grid, but they knew it wouldn't be enough. These weren't raiders. They were trained soldiers, equipped with weapons that could destroy entire cities. Lyra stood at the edge of the command tower, staring up at the ships. "So this is what strength brings," she whispered. Reed placed a hand on her shoulder. "Strength always brings fear, but fear can't win if courage stands against it." Reed turned to her crew. "Prepare evacuation routes. Get the civilians underground. We hold as long as we can." The Virel warriors, no longer fragile, no longer afraid, moved quickly into position. They wore new armor now, simple but strong, designed with human help. They had become defenders of their world. Soft music builds, slow and emotional. Lyra looked out once more and spoke softly to the wind. "They called us weak. Now they call us dangerous. Maybe. That means we're finally free." High above, on the bridge of a Zarth warship, the High Commander watched the surface through glowing eyes. "They will resist," an officer said. "Let them," the commander replied coldly. "We will remind the galaxy who holds power." Outside the window, hundreds of ships began to move into attack formation. Engines roar. Lights flicker. Sirens rise. The invasion of Viralia had begun. Screen fades to black. Text appears. The hum of engines, distant explosions, and a low-rising drum of war. The sky above Viralia burned red. Hundreds of Zarth Dominion ships hovered over the planet, their weapons glowing like stars ready to fall. Below, the Virel warriors stood tall. No longer the fragile artists, healers, and dreamers, they had become defenders of their home. Captain Reed walked among them, her armor scratched, her face grim. "Remember," she said to the assembled Virel, "strength is in your hearts, not your weapons." The humans had given them knowledge, strategy, and guidance. But tonight the Virel would fight their own battle. Lyra looked around at her people. Children once taught to run now carried shields. Artists now held staffs charged with energy. Elders who once whispered prayers of peace now guided squads with sharp eyes and steady hands. She lifted her weapon high. "For Viralia!" she shouted. The Virel responded with a unified cry. "For Viralia!" Music swells, cinematic and epic. The first wave of Zarth fighters descended. Cannons fired, sending streaks of red through the clouds. The Virel unleashed traps they had prepared, energy nets, collapsing bridges, and controlled explosions. Each strike was precise, every move calculated. The Zarth forces were powerful, but they were not ready for heart. The humans fought alongside them, supporting flanks and intercepting heavy attacks, but they stayed back enough to let the Virel lead. This was their moment. From the northern ridge, Lyra spotted the Zarth command ship, massive, dark, pulsating with energy. She knew it had to fall or the battle would never end. "We take the command ship," she told her squad. "Everyone else holds the line." The Virel nodded. They trusted her now. This was not just a battle for survival. It was a battle for their identity, their freedom, and their future. As the squad approached, enemy fire cut through the air like knives. Lyra's small frame moved with skill and speed. Her staff glowed, sending pulses that deflected energy blasts. Beside her, Tarin, a young Virel, fired a sling device that sent a shockwave into the hull of the command ship. Sparks flew, panels exploded. The Zarth soldiers tried to stop them, but the Virel were everywhere, on rooftops, in alleyways, behind barricades. Every attack met resistance. Every advance was slowed. Lyra's heart raced. She remembered Captain Reed's words, "Courage is stronger than fear." Now she felt it. Fear was there, yes, but courage was stronger. With a final push, Lyra and her squad reached the command ship's docking bay. They planted charges and set a timer. "Hold the line!" she shouted to the rest of the Virel below. Meanwhile, the humans coordinated orbital defense. Reed fired a plasma cannon at a Zarth cruiser, creating a diversion. The Virel warriors took advantage, striking at the enemy's weak points. As the timer ticked down, the squad leapt back to safety. Bang! The command ship erupted in fire, shaking the sky. Its fleet faltered, confused and leaderless. From below, the Virel cheered. From above, the humans smiled. For the first time in history, the fragile ones had faced a true empire, and had won. The battle didn't end immediately. Small skirmishes continued through the night, but the Zarth Dominion's forces retreated. Virelia was battered but alive, and something had changed in the galaxy. The Virel were no longer weak. They were warriors. Humans had helped them see it, but it was their own courage that had won the day. Days later, Lyra stood on a hill overlooking the city. Buildings had been repaired. New defenses were in place. The people of Virelia walked freely again. She felt the weight of leadership, but also the pride of survival. Captain Reed approached. "You did well," she said. Lyra smiled. "We all did, and we'll keep doing it. For our people, for our world." Reed nodded. "Remember this, the strength is not about fighting alone. It's about standing together." Lyra turned to the horizon, where stars sparkled with unknown possibilities. "Then we are ready," she said softly. "No matter who comes next." Far above, in the dark reaches of space, the Zarth Dominion watched from afar. Their scanners recorded the victory, their pride shaken. "Humans and Virel," one officer said quietly. "They will change everything." The High Commander did not respond. "Let them rise," he said finally. "We will see who the stronger race truly is." Back on Virelia, the humans and Virel gathered in the city square. Children ran with toys shaped like staffs and shields. Elders told stories of courage. The city hummed with life, art, and hope. Lyra lifted her staff high one last time. "They called us weak," she said. "But humans saw something else. Not weakness, potential. And we made it real." The Virel cheered, their voices echoing across the world. For the first time they felt it. Freedom, strength, and pride. Epic music swells, fading slowly. The screen goes black. Text appears. "The fragile ones are no longer fragile. This is just the beginning."